She had come a long way from the terrified mare who once trembled at the sight of her own shadow. Ember was no longer just the horse nobody wanted. She had proven her worth the day she found Sadie in the canyon. But on this crisp autumn morning, something inside her stirred again, something no one around her understood. The children laughed as they rode across the golden prairie, their small voices echoing between the trees. It was supposed to be a harmless school outing, just a gentle ride near the old timber bridge. The leaves crunched beneath hooves, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and wood smoke. But Ember's ears twitched, her muscles tensed, and as they approached the bridge, she suddenly stopped cold. Gideon rode behind the group and noticed her hesitation. Ember stared at the bridge as if it held something terrible on the other side. He gently tugged her reins, whispering encouragement, but she refused to budge. Her eyes were wide, nostrils flared, and her legs locked. The other horses crossed without pause. The children giggled, but Ember would not follow. No one paid much attention at first. They assumed she was nervous. Old habits, perhaps. But then, one of the teachers looked around and froze. Her face went pale. She counted the children again, lips moving silently. One was missing. Panic did not erupt all at once. At first, they called the girl's name with calm voices, scanning the edges of the trail. Maybe she had stopped to pick flowers or tie her boot. But when her name echoed unanswered for the third time, calm turned to alarm. She was gone. The group fanned out. Adults barked orders. Horses were turned back along the path. But Ember did not move with them. She stood still, her ears pinned forward, staring at the planks of the bridge. Then, suddenly, she reared back and let out a sharp, piercing whinny, so loud and unexpected that it silenced every voice. And that was when they heard it. The sound was faint, so faint it could have been mistaken for wind. A muffled cry, weak and far away, rising up from beneath the bridge. No one else would have noticed it. But Ember had. Gideon dismounted and moved to the edge. He peered over the side of the bridge, down into the narrow gorge below. Shadows danced between the rocks. Then he saw it. A small figure, curled in a hollow beneath the beams. Her jacket was caught on a root, her face streaked with dirt. She was alive, but barely. There was no path leading directly to her. The slope beneath the bridge was steep and covered in slick moss and shale. Any wrong step could send a rescuer tumbling down into the crevice. They had no ropes, no tools. The girl had to be reached quickly. The sun was starting to dip, and the temperature would fall fast. As the adults argued over what to do, Ember began moving again. She turned away from the bridge and started down a hidden game trail no one else had noticed. Her steps were cautious but sure. It was as if she had walked this way before, in another life. Gideon saw her and followed without hesitation. The trail was narrow, barely wide enough for Ember's small frame. Loose stones shifted beneath her hooves. Branches scratched at her sides. But she pressed on, every muscle alive with quiet purpose. Gideon kept close behind, trusting her completely now. Down in the ravine, the little girl was crying softly. Her voice was raw. Her ankle twisted. She was trapped beneath the twisted roots of a fallen tree, unable to crawl out on her own. The path down was dangerous, but Ember had brought them close enough for Gideon to see exactly where to place his feet. Gideon reached her just as the wind picked up, sweeping cold air through the ravine like a warning. The child clung to his coat as he lifted her gently from the hollow. Her hands trembled, and her face was pale. She could barely speak, but her eyes widened when she saw Ember waiting above. The climb back was a different challenge. The slope was slick now, the earth wet from the settling mist. Gideon's boots slipped more than once as he searched for footholds. He held the child tightly with one arm and used the other to guide them upward. But it was Ember who made the rescue possible. She positioned herself above the slope, bracing against a tree root. Gideon tied a rope from his thul bag around the child's waist, fastening the other end to Ember's saddle ring. She did not move. Not when the rope pulled taut. Not when the child's weight shifted against her. She stood like a statue, solid, calm, unshaken. Step by step, Gideon climbed. Ember's strength held them. Her eyes stayed locked on his every movement. The child whimpered once but did not panic. She trusted the horse, even though she barely understood why. And Ember, for reasons no one could explain, trusted herself. When they reached the top, the others rushed forward. The teacher fell to her knees, sobbing with relief. The girl's classmates gathered around in stunned silence. But all eyes eventually turned to Ember. She stood quietly, still watching the edge of the ravine, as if she knew that life had once again hung by a thread, and she had pulled it back. Later, someone would ask Gideon how Ember knew, how she had heard the cry when no one else did, how she had found that hidden path and stood unmoving through the rescue. He would have no answer, only the memory of a frightened horse, who had once flinched at every sound, and now stood tall in the storm. That night, as the sun disappeared behind the hills and the stars blinked awake, Ember stood in her stall, calm and content. Gideon rubbed her neck and whispered softly, words meant only for her. She had crossed an invisible bridge that day, one built not of timber, but of trust. The child would heal. Her family would remember that day forever. And in the center of it all stood the small chestnut mare who had once been forgotten, now a legend whispered among the ranches and trails of the open land. If this story moved you, if you believe that courage often comes in the quietest forms, then share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Subscribe to hear more true stories of instinct, devotion, and the animals who never stop listening.